Hey everybody, welcome to another Bald Movie. Today, Jim and I are going back and going through a recent classic. I don't know, a well-regarded recent movie. It's a Netflix movie. It's got a whole bunch of famous people. It's got a famous director. It's The Irishman.
Yeah.
We missed this in last award season because of how busy we were. And now that people are fleeing the theaters, we got plenty of time to go back and give some of these a look over. This was up for a lot of Oscars. Didn't win a lot of Oscars. Of course, it was directed by Martin Scorsese. Scorsese? Is that how you say that?
I think so, yeah.
It stars the big three, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. It's a screenplay by Steven Zalian and is based on a novel called I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt. And what would you call this? A fictionalized historical?
That's a good question.
Because it feels a little bit more based on reality than like The Godfather.
This is the big fish of Godfather movie of mafia movies, right? Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like a tall tale, maybe, or maybe it's more real life of the events of this person's life.
I remember reading or around a lot of the people that I kind of follow that this was kind of everyone said it's a good movie, but it was kind of like ho-hum, or it's like, I don't know whether you expect, or there's a little bit of like, oh, Jesus, we're going to throw a bunch of awards at these old dudes again. But, every once in a while, these boomers get their shit together and they get the right script, they get the right talent, they get the right director, they get the right technology. And I'm a sucker for kind of Godfather, mafia movie type stuff.
Me too.
I thought this was a really engaging and entertaining tale, especially since it's approximately 5 years long.
Yeah, it takes as much time to watch this movie as it did for Frank Sheeran to do all of these things that it portrays in the movie.
Yeah.
It's a one-to-one retelling of Frank Sheeran's life.
Right. And I remember a couple times, like I would hit pause on the remote and it would show the time. And I'd be like, Jesus Christ, there's still 2 hours left to go. But I never felt like it was dragging on. Just like me being completely shocked at how little time I've watched the movie and how much of the movie I've got left to go.
I was with you. Yeah, it didn't feel long.
No.
It felt right. It felt like they were telling the story, the complete story of this man's life, sort of a cradle to grave of a mobster kind of story. And it is epic. The movie size itself is epic, but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think.
I want to talk about the thing that I think it got the most press for, which is the remarkable de-aging technology. All of these men, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, are very old. They're not young men of vigor and dynamism that they were in like the 70s. This is not Raging Bull.
Nope.
This is not Michael Corleone. These are old men, but the thing that I thought was amazing is, so when they roll this back to like the 50s, they cast all of their associates as relatively young men. And then those men age up with these guys as the real actors catch up to their present age. And I don't know, maybe these guys jump out more about like having all this de-aging processing or makeup on, and the other guys kind of distract. But, watching Ray Romano go from Ray Romano old to like 80-year-old Ray Romano kind of took your mind off of what's going on with De Niro and Pesci. What did you kind of feel me on that? Or?
Oh, yeah. I found it hard to tell, not having like a clear picture of exactly how old Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro and Al Pacino look now.
Because mentally, I always think of like Robert De Niro as like, he's not Raging Bull or Taxi Driver, but he's kind of like
I think of
perpetually
him as
Bullwinkle or Meet the Fockers.
Exactly. That's what I think of him as now.
He's way older now.
He's much older.
I'm much older than when I saw those movies. Yeah,
absolutely. But I lose that in my mind when I'm watching this movie, and I'm looking at going, which one of these versions of this man is the real man,
right?
And which one of these are de-aged? And I think that's exactly what they were going for.
Yeah.
I see the seams every once in a while.
You're aware it's a special effect, sure.
The way that the actor moves, or like, there are some scenes where you can tell, and we'll talk about those. But yeah, for the most part, this visual effect is really convincing.
That's a good point, because I watched the Irishman Conversations companion piece. It's like I actually was surprised at how short it was. We did
like 20 minutes.
We did a promo for it, so I thought it was going to be this kind of like big kind of production, and I was excited. Like, why doesn't Netflix do that more often? Like have commentaries and behind the scenes packages and stuff for some of this higher profile. This was a 25-minute, and it was Pesci and De Niro and Pacino sitting around the table with Scorsese, and just having conversation about working together, because it seemed like this was like a group effort. They all wanted to work together one last time, and they've been planning this for like over a decade,
except for Joe Pesci, who didn't want to work at all.
Yeah.
But was convinced to. Yeah,
I'm still cashing my Home Alone checks. I took a couple bricks to the head. I'm done with all this. But they all were enamored with this "I Heard You Paint Houses" book, and they're passing around and like, this is the one that they're wanting to do. I thought this was a great special feature, but the thing that was really cool was they showed some before and after scenes of like Joe Pesci as young Joe Pesci in the 50s, and then old man they showed the him like with the makeup or the digital effect, and then they showed him actually acting without any filters in the scene.
Yeah, side by side. It's
amazing. And you're right, it does show through. Because they also spent a lot of time in that feature talking about how the CGI did have to work. Yeah. But it's like Scorsese like saying you're only supposed to be 55. You need to come out of that chair. Yeah. And how. I don't know. How easy is that to do when you're an 80-year-old man?
I imagine it's really hard.
Come down the stairs like you're 45.
Yeah. 38-year-old me could probably not act like I'm 20-year-old me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel different. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's tough. I think one of the keys to getting this process, because I know in conversation video, they talk about the cameras that they used and how the effect was done technically. And Scorsese was very much like, I don't want the actors acting with tennis balls on their face.
Right.
Because they got to get the emotion. They got to feel this scene like they're in it. And so they went away from this idea, and then a guy from ILM came back to them and said, we think we know a way to do it invisibly. So we don't have to put anything on them. Mm-hmm. So my takeaway from this is they're using a lot of infrared cameras. They have this camera called the three-headed monster, which is like traditional camera in the center, two flanking infrared cameras.
It's the Xbox camera.
Yeah, it's like a Kinect sort of thing. And they use all that data that they gather with the infrared to then sort of deep fake faces and filters and stuff onto the actors.
I think it's going to revolutionize the industry. Like,
yeah, I still think you have that problem of like a 70-year-old man trying to act 30.
Right.
But there are ways to fix that too.
Right.
We're just not there yet.
But like aging people and changing, because you're right, like not everyone can be like Smeagol from Lord of the Rings, Andy Serkis, and sit there wearing a green sock with golf balls glued all over their face. Like, the people that can do that and act, like, hats off to them, but like not everyone can do that. This is going to open up like that whole, like, this is going to change makeup and prosthetics. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the CGI what it's going to do the like makeup and all that to what like CGI did to like model making.
Yeah, if I were a makeup artist right now, I'd be very worried about my job 20 years from now.
Right.
Like if you're just going into the makeup effects department in a big studio.
Yeah, like 20 or 30 years from now, the Wes Andersons of the day will be bragging about like, we actually got some makeup artists out of retirement to do. Those are actually age lines we painted on their face. And
right.
We threw some latex and like wrinkled it up and like made a mold. I'm really excited to see because we've seen this before, like the earliest versions of this in Tron and the various Star Wars where they have it all CGI, Carrie Fisher or whatnot. But this is just, this is going to keep getting better and better. And I thought it was really impressive.
It's much more convincing than like a Tron Legacy, for sure.
And it allows these guys to give really good performances. It's completely unencumbered by, like seeing classic De Niro performances and be very convincing. I just was a real joy to watch. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the cast. We talked about the big three. Joe Pesci plays Russ Buffalino, one of the heads of the Five family, right?
He's a boss. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the power structure.
That's true. Yeah, I think he's really he's a mafia don for sure. You got Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, who is just a guy. He something of a commando in World War II, came back to home. He's driving a meat truck. He's a little bit morally flexible with who gets what meat and what money changes hands. And he attracts the attention of the mob for that.
And he's the main character of the movie. He's actually the guy who, in the book, I Heard You Paint Houses, is sort of giving his life story.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is that his experience in war gave him not just moral flexibility, but the ability to kill without it really bothering him. And that's a huge asset to mafia, because despite the public reputation, not every mafia kills people. Like, it's like the majority of the killing is done by very few really hard men.
Yeah,
and Frank's
there's
one of those dudes.
Scene that I really like where he's talking to Russ about the war.
Yeah.
And where he learned to speak Italian. And he says, after he realized that he was going to survive this thing where survival was the only thing that mattered, he sort of just said, fuck everything else. Like whatever happens. It changed him.
He's amazing. Al Pacino plays Jimmy Hoffa, which is really entertaining. But it's the depth of this cast. You got Harvey Keitel playing Angelo Bruno, Ray Romano as Bill Buffalino, Bobby Cannavale as Skinny Razor, Jesse Plemons as Chucky O'Brien, Sebastian Maniscalco as Crazy Joe Gallo, Jack Houston as Robert Kennedy. And if you don't recognize that name, he played Richard Harrow in the guy that wear the tin mask.
I was going to say, you might not recognize his face either.
Yeah. Because he had a lot of CGI work himself. That was in Boardwalk Empire. Dominic Lombardozzi, Herc from The Wire as Fat Tony Salerno. Stephen Graham,
another Boardwalk Empire alum,
bringing a lot of that
Capone energy
to his Tony
Capone energy in that role.
Big Capone energy and Tony Provenzano. This cast is like super deep, and there's like, that's just the people that you probably know by reputation. There's a lot of guys that you're going to be like, oh, I know he's that guy. He's the guy that always plays cops on TV. He's the guy that. And they all do really good work, and they all kind of seamlessly kind of blend into their roles.
Yeah,
and a lot of times when you get this many big names, the people, their actors kind of overshine the roles. But I felt like, especially Robert De Niro did a really good job disappearing to Frank Sheeran, but like Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa, Al Pacino's kind of default Al Pacino just really suits that role very well.
I guess I don't know anything about Jimmy Hoffa. Like, the one thing
I don't know much either. I'm just saying that, like, the way he was supposed to feel, like, larger than life. You know?
Yeah, he definitely brings that larger than life quality.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to kind of do a lot of research to see how I felt about this, but the one thing, because a lot of times when I watch these historical movies, it feels so real that you're like, oh, this is just right on.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes Scorsese does a really good job, like Gangs in New York, where he just essentially tells a historical tale. And then you got something like this, where I didn't look into it, but there's a lot of JFK conspiracy stuff that I'm pretty sure is bullshit from other things I've looked into. And this movie essentially traffics into it, that, JFK was murdered by the mafia because he kind of double crossed them. And after he got elected, then he went after them. I don't know, like Dave Ferry, who is played by Joe Pesci in the JFK film. He's the guy he's bald with the grease paint eyebrows, this crazy ass character.
Only shown in like one short scene in this movie.
But he's like, he's involved in this Bay of Pigs, So the Bay of Pigs invasion was a mob-ran government conspiracy to take back Cuba from Castro and get their casinos back.
Okay.
Which is essentially the plot of Godfather 2. And I think probably has some element of truth in it. But from this perspective, like, the mob is pulling all the damn strings, it seems like. And here's the thing. The mob are really dangerous people. And I surely wouldn't want them mad at me. But they're also kind of bullshit artists. Like, if you've read anything about, like, the production of Godfather, the production of Scarface, they love shit that makes them look even more badass than they are.
Oh, yeah.
And, like,
their power is mostly reputational. So
yeah, like, I'm sure the mob loves the common and popular theory that they whacked JFK. Did they? I don't know, but they get a lot of mileage out of the fact that, like, Jimmy Hoffa is being extra defiant to them. Like, look, Jimmy, if we're going to kill the president, we'll certainly kill a labor union president.
They wouldn't dare.
They wouldn't dare.
I love Pacino's performance in that scene.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. But like, it is a fact. Here's the other thing that I thought was interesting about politics today, because, you know, I run my mouth a lot about I think we should have more labor protections and I think we should have stronger labor unions. But a reality is the strong labor unions were often backed by like mob muscle, was often connected, like the finances were commingled. Is there a way to have a strong labor union without the corruption? Because we killed the labor unions. Mm-hmm. I think we have just as much corruption.
Yeah, we do.
It's just now we have corporations with with the state with guns and muscle protecting them and abusing us. When the labor unions were strong, we had mafia with guns and muscles fighting it out. And now it's like, it feels like it's like the labor's been disarmed. The official instruments of corporations and the government still have their bullets and their guns and their muscle, and things have gotten wacko. But
yeah, the power has shifted away from the people toward the corporation.
Yeah.
In that regard, and you know, as much as the people are actually represented by the unions.
Yeah.
Here's where my knowledge of the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s in general holds me back, because I have very little of it. I was not born until 1982, so all of this happened before I was even born. And I don't have a clear picture of what labor unions, how powerful labor unions were, what the power structures were there, sort of what their influences were, whether they were influenced by the mob heavily, or whether that was a sort of thing that came later, like the union started as something pure and righteous, and Hoffa built all that, and then it was corrupted sort of outside of his control. Because that's the impression I got from this film, is that Hoffa had built this thing. Yes, occasionally somebody had to die,
and it was complementary to the mob.
There was dirty work to do, but it was separate from the mob until the Fitzes and the pros get in there and start commingling with them.
Yeah, then the labor
and that could
unions...
be totally off base. I don't know, but that's the impression I got from the film.
Yeah, and I was like, but that's scary, because it's like, if it requires like some super strong, charismatic individual to keep the wolves away from the door, it's a fact of life that you're going to have weak leadership from time to time. People are going to put the wrong people in power. So what do you do? Like, if this corruption gets in there, roots in like a tick, and you can't get it out. I don't know.
Which is the case in this film.
Yeah. It's like, it's kind of a cautionary tale of like, when we do this again, when we rebuild these structures, can we do it without the mob? The other thing is, like, the mafia is so weak now, relatively speaking, that the power vacuum, if we had a strong labor, some other probably force would fill in that, and you want it to be some kind of civic minded institution, and not like the Russian mafia or the Yakuza or M13 or whatever shadowy, scary group of dudes that you want to imagine that would fill in that vacuum and become rich and powerful off of it. But I thought, it's like, I was just amazed at how the politics of it, because you hear Jimmy Hoffa, these mafia guys giving these stump speeches, and it sounds like a Bernie Sanders rally. Yeah. Power to the people, these fat cat corporations ripping us off. And
either that or a Steve Ballmer Microsoft address. Solidarity, solidarity, solidarity.
Yeah. Truck drivers. But it's true. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting and scary, and like a future kind of thing, is this thing that they're saying is still literally true. Like, truck drivers make the United States economy work. Like, if you got any kind of delivery, bought anything at a store, a truck driver drove it to you.
And that will always be true, I think. Well,
I'm just saying, 30 years from
robots,
now.
Robots might be doing this work.
30 years from now, like, as the labor you start not having to rely on that labor. What is like, if there's only 6% of traffic is driven by a person, who gives a shit about solidarity? Robots have perfect solidarity. You're fucked. I thought that was something interesting as I was looking at watching this with 2020 eyes.
Yeah, you almost need something that's not a labor union but a civilian union. Right? Like a non-corporation, non-government union of just regular people who maybe don't work at that point.
Yeah. Maybe we can say with the political angle a little bit, because I was also shocked, because I maybe know a little bit more than you about especially the 60s connection and the labor union, because I've been reading a lot about that. But I was shocked at some of this information. Like the fact that Hoffa came up supporting Democrats, but then got pardoned. He was in prison for quite a long time, got pardoned by Nixon.
He went to school for 5 years.
Yeah, I was shocked about that, but I looked it up, and apparently it's true. He was pardoned by Nixon in December of 1971, but he had one condition. do not involve yourself in the management or leadership of any labor union until 1980. Now, this man gets whacked in 1975.
Okay.
I don't think he kept his fingers out of that pie. And the last third of this movie, I think, is the most interesting part, which is essentially a man who cannot conceive of his own limits. Like, he thinks that the mob is increasingly just playing strong arm tactics. And like you said, they wouldn't dare. Right. Like, you know, when Frank comes there that last time and says, like, hey, it is what it is. Yeah. They're going, like, and that's the other thing is nobody can say, like, you're going to get a bullet in your brain. Right. It's like,
they're going to come to your house and they're going to shoot you.
They're not going to want to hear that. They're not going to want to hear that, Jimmy. It is what it is, Jimmy. We're at the end of the line, Jimmy. And he just couldn't accept it. What is it about that? Like, you get pardoned by the president and warned, like, look, this is a once in a lifetime literal get out of jail free. Stay the fuck away from this shit for at least 10 years so that we can get some things cleaned up. And you can't do it. You can't do you're fighting the federal government, you're fighting the mob, you're fighting everybody.
No, it's I guess it's a matter of it's what matters to him. And to him, the labor union was everything. And whether it was the power that comes with that or the money that comes with that or the influence, I don't know. Maybe it was the pride that comes with that. Yeah. It seems like that might have been the case. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't care. He doesn't value his own life as much as he values being the head of this union. And
it leads to some really funny scenes that work despite the crazy tension, like that meeting in Florida between Jimmy Hoffa and Tony Pro.
Jesus.
The subtle layers of, like, it's essentially the double dog dare diplomacy in, like, a Christmas Story, only with the mafia stuff. Like, it's all jockeying. Like, Jimmy won't wait if you're late. Tony knows that, so he's going to show up 20 minutes late.
In Bermuda shorts.
He's going to show up in Bermuda shorts and flip-flops because he knows that Jimmy's going to take that personally.
Jesus.
And he's because, you know, Tony's the made man and Jimmy is, I don't know what Jimmy is, honestly. I don't know what Jimmy is. How is Jimmy so fucking powerful and influential that he could give this much shit to mafia guys? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy the way he talks to some of these guys recklessly.
Yeah, I mean, slurs and calling them just straight up sons of bitches. And just like, I don't know how I got away with it either. And I was always just, my mind was blown when he would open his mouth.
But it's so funny because, like, Frank, he tries that up. Like, Jimmy brings all of his dudes into his office and is like, you dumb motherfuckers. I'm up here asshole deep and the president's fucking brother. And you're giving checks away to your mom's aunts, blah. And Robert De Niro's Frank just gets up, puts on his coat and says, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not a dumb motherfucker. And Jimmy Hoffa comes in and is like, oh, I wasn't talking about you. Why can't he realize he's doing that, like, at a mega atomic level when he's talking with guys like Fat Tony?
Yeah, and there's this weird divide. Somewhere there's a line that you don't cross with these guys. But where that line is, it's hard to tell because, you know, in the same breath, you can call them those people and they'll get super fucking offended by that. Or you can call them a son of a bitch. You can scream at them, shout other slurs at them, and they aren't fazed by it. Right. Like, they puff up and they act all tough and then they sit back down at the table.
But I thought and there's another scene later on where they're playing essentially a game of telephone where Frank goes to the boss and
it's a well-constructed scene too.
It's a series of him going and like, he said what? Yeah. And then him trying to, like,
somebody should tell this guy this thing. They don't even tell him, go back and tell this guy. They say somebody should tell him.
Yeah. He needs a friend to sit him down and set him straight, Frank. He needs somebody to do that for him. And it's just so really funny. And it leads up to the scene with Frank getting this award. Jimmy is going to give it to him, but also Al Pacino as Russ is going to sit Jimmy down in the wings and try to say, like, one last time, mafia head to what the labor union, aspiring labor union president.
I'm talking about Joe Pesci.
Yeah. What did I say?
Al Pacino was talking to Jimmy Hoffa.
Al Pacino. It's a one-man performance here. Played both sides of the table. Well, amazing.
Hey, with that effects tech.
And what's really funny is because you usually see Joe Pesci as the guy who just, like, is the loose cannon, flies off.
I love this. And I love it.
That character is history because he pulls that into this old gangster character and you're just waiting for it. And the fact that he keeps, like, come on, Jimmy, come on, you're being a little high-headed here. He's so patient. It really sells you. And
it's a totally different Joe Pesci. And I was super happy to see that. And I think that's the thing, if I'm reading this in conversation stuff correctly, that sort of brought Joe Pesci on board in this, is he said, look, I don't want to come back and act the same way I've acted in every other movie I've been in. What am I, a clown? You know, yeah, that's ridiculous. I don't want to do that again. I don't need to do that again. And so, you know, Scorsese comes to him and says, it's not going to be that. You're playing this very other guy. And it's on the screen. Like, he is extremely different from the fucking Goodfellas, right? Like,
oh yeah,
he's nothing like that.
Yeah, or what I forget his character's name in Casino. Yeah, but like, yeah, there's an uncontrollable hothead, but they let Stephen play that role. Yeah, Stephen Graham. Another moment in that incredible set of scenes around Frank's award party is when Joe Pesci sits him down and gives him the ring. Like, it's a real moment, and I thought, like, what is it like to have that power bestowed on you by another person? Like, it's like a king of old dubbing you a knight. Like, you are now untouchable. You are now a part of something that can't be fucked with, like, at almost any level. Yeah. If you go to prison, you're going to be taken care of. Your family's going to be taken care of. No one, you know, not a police officer, not a mafia don is going to ever fuck with you. And it felt really kind of almost a tender father-son moment. Yeah, absolutely. I really, I don't know. There are some things to be admired in that organization. Sure. The solidarity, the fraternity, the loyalty, the honesty, the loyalty. Like, you are 100% honest, and if you're not, you get whacked. Like, there are consequences for not following these rules, but you're 100% honest with your boss. Yeah, that's the romantic view of it, anyway. Yeah. For sure, yeah, and I'm sure people play around the edges of that. I mean, Tony Pro's probably one of those guys, but like, you know, there's a scene where there are a couple of scenes that exemplify this honesty and this loyalty. One of them is when Frank is tasked to burn out this laundry place. Yeah, and then this old Jewish washerwoman that owns that. Yeah, and he gets called in by Angelo Bruno because Angelo Bruno has a stake in that laundry, and Frank didn't know it. And there's a moment of hesitation, right? There's a moment in Frank where he's looking at this guy where they ask, what were you doing while you were out? What were you gonna do? And he thought about it. And he's like, well, he tells them I was gonna bomb out a laundry because it sounded like fun. Yeah. And then he says, who told you? And this ties back to the scene with Ray Romano when he was just like the meat guy who got who got name the caught, names for this whole truck of meat missing, which is fucking stupid of them. Just the dumbest thing you could possibly do. Well, I don't know what happened. I didn't load the meat, man. Hey, but I can tell you, they better not be looking at me. That's all I can say. They don't look at me. But it harkens back to that scene where that whole scene is a test, right? Like when he's vying to be his lawyer here, he's like, would you give up names in order to avoid prison? And he says no. He says all the right things. Like, these are, and then like later in that scene, he's also saying, you know, I'm going to represent you whether you did it or not. Why don't you tell me, did you do it? And he shows honesty and loyalty in both of those cases. And so when they do it later on, and he's got this moment where, fuck, is this a test? Am I supposed to give a name here, or am I supposed to shut the fuck up? Yeah. And it's an impossible especially since he likes the guy. He doesn't want to kill. And this is also foreshadowing for what's going to happen with Jimmy Hoffa, only on a bigger, grander scale. And then they say, now is not the time to stay silent. Yeah. Because you're dealing with the boss, right? You're supposed to be honest with your boss. I'll tell you the one thing that I thought was going to work out really well, because I think the one weakness in The Godfather is I never buy Kate and Michael's relationship. You know? Yeah. Like, it just doesn't, she's not a great mafia wife. Like, the sense of betrayal that I just never bought it. I thought that was one kind of character beat that doesn't. They finally get there in the second Godfather, but in the first Godfather, that's a pretty weak storyline. And I'm thinking, oh, they're setting this thing up with Robert De Niro's daughter, played by Anne Paquin. Yeah, Peggy. Yeah, I thought it's like they're actually going to get there. They're actually going to bring up a girl that, you know, and you're going to see the light go out in her eyes and how she changes, how she feels about her father. And then when they get into like how much she loves Jimmy Hoffa, because Jimmy Hoffa is he's not a thug. He's a political leader. He's fighting for the people. He's making she's writing reports in school about him. And the fact that like, you know, Peggy didn't completely turn on her father until he murdered Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to be a really powerful moment, but it just didn't quite come together.
No, I
was
thought
expecting
it did.
like a big scene on Anna Paquin. I'm like, man, you cast Anna Paquin because she's capable of hitting these, and like she's going to really just rip his guts out. And they went probably more realistically, a little bit more low key, but also I don't know, like you didn't get enough out of adult Peggy to keep that momentum going from the childhood arc, and I felt like it kind of fizzled. I was a little disappointed.
I didn't. I'll tell you why. Although I do agree. Anna Paquin got almost nothing to do in this movie.
It's a shame.
And it is a shame because I like her a lot. But here's why it worked for me, because it was tied into the phone call that he has to make to Joe, to Jimmy Hoffa's wife.
Yeah.
And that scene is so phenomenally good. And there's this moment right before it when Peggy questions why he hasn't called her yet. And there's something on his face. There's something in his demeanor, the way he goes and pours another drink before he does this, that tells everybody in that room that he had something to do with this. And I think it was a very, very subtly played, well played moment. But then that phone call that scene might be Oscar worthy in my opinion alone, because the realism with which they play it, like and that's a hallmark of this movie, I think, is the realistic way that people talk. And I'm not saying that just because my dad talks exactly like these people do.
But this is true.
Exactly. Word for word, the same phrases, the same accent, the same everything. But the sort of stutters and stops and ums and uhs and the way that people communicate in this show.
Because this guy's a straight shooter. He's a man of integrity. And in this moment with a person he loves,
he has no words.
He's got nothing but lies and bullshit.
And he doesn't want to put that out there, so he tries to put nothing out there.
Yes.
And it takes everything he has to say nothing.
Yeah.
That he doesn't have anything left to say something comforting or something she needs to hear in that moment. And it's just such a fucking amazingly written and acted scene, which it's just a phone call. It's just a conversation. It's not even a conversation between two people.
Yeah, there's not a lot of stuff for women to do in this film because, you know, this isn't a world dominated by women. I thought Jimmy Hoffa's wife, I mean, it's telling that, like, I know her as Jimmy Hoffa's wife.
Yeah. She
was pretty good. They established her as kind of like a real soldier in her own right. Like, she's pretty fiery. She was all 100% behind the labor movement. And, like, the scene of her getting in the car after the rate of car bombings and her, like, you know, we've seen The Godfather. We've seen this film where people are getting blown up all the time and her like kind of like, that was a really fucking tense scene.
And the way they use the music, because you've got this upbeat song sort of playing in the background. And then as soon as she goes to maybe turn the key, the music completely cuts.
Yeah.
And then she sits there for a good minute.
Yeah.
Just thinking, should I turn this key?
You know, it's interesting because there's so many foreshadowings effectively in this movie. And I've only seen it once and I keep on thinking of more. But like, you hit the nail on the head about how unconvincing he was with every once in a while his life puts him in situations where he has to try to explain to somebody as a man of principle why the meat truck is empty.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And he can't do it. And him dealing with his daughter and him dealing with Hoffa's wife are instances where he pulls up with an empty meat truck and he's got nothing to say. He's got nothing to say.
The proverbial meat truck.
Yeah.
The proverbial empty meat truck.
Yeah. He's got the seal unbroken. Like, just like he's got I was doing cross country ride with my friend and my wife. I was staying in, how could I be possibly?
Yeah. What does he tell him when he gets on a plane to Detroit and comes back a few hours later?
Right.
We don't see that because there's nothing to tell.
Right. And that's the scenes I just think are amazing. I felt like the last 20 minutes or so of the film, I'm not mad at it, but it felt a little bit Return of the King-y, where it's just,
is that them in prison part? And
and in prison, and then him as an old man, kind of like doddering around talking with his nurse and with the priest, and
I think this is Martin Scorsese, however you say it, feeling old. I mean, I don't begrudge him that. Like, I think when I'm as old as these guys are, I'm gonna look back at my life and I'm gonna, in some ways romanticize it, in some ways mourn what could have been, those sorts of things. I think this is just what old men do.
Well, especially this guy who making a point of how family is important to these people.
Yeah.
And yet we leave him on Christmas Eve in the twilight of his life and no one is there.
Yep.
No one is there for him. None of his, he's got his, I don't know whether his wife has disowned him or he's dead now. None of his daughters, none of his kids,
everyone
none of
in
his
his
old mafia
stories are
buddies.
dead.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought was incredibly effective is when you get introduced to a character, 50% of the time you see this giant text over their head, which is who they are and when they're going to die and how they're going to die. And there's like one guy that was like respected and liked by all, died of old age and asleep. But everybody else is like throat slit, burned alive, exploded, shot twice in the back of the head. Like there's like 30 of those different scenes. And part of it, it's not like Frank just had the bad fortune of outliving everybody, and everyone that was tied to him in like blood or for like genuine love or affection, he drove away. So that he's just now going to, but I don't, the thing that I thought was interesting is, does it actually bother him? How would I know? This is a man who's so fucking hard. He shows real emotionally 2 times in his entire life, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, it bothers him. Certainly that phone call he had to make, where he says, how does a man make a phone call like that and still call himself good? Like, I think he regrets a lot of this, and it is a life of extreme sadness. In the moment, you sort of have like this extreme camaraderie and this respect and loyalty and honesty between everyone. But that is a veneer over what is a very sad life, because if you look at his home life, he's driving his family away. He can't tell them anything. Like he doesn't really have a family. He has people that he lives with who do their own thing while he tries to protect them, right? Quote unquote.
I wonder if you mentioned about this being Martin Scorsese old. I remember reading something a couple years ago in an interview where Martin Scorsese no shit believes he's going to hell. Like for a couple, I think the one he hangs his hat on might be he paid for an abortion or something like that. But he thinks that there's no salvation for him. He's done too many bad things, made too many mistakes, he's a committed Roman Catholic. He's committed too many mortal sins. He's going to hell. I wonder if that explains why it's like everything's just so fucking bleak at the end with all of his, like these characters are just internal wastelands. I wonder if that's like a truth that he feels.
Yeah. I don't know.
I feel that at the end of this, this feels very like, this man on Christmas Eve with no family. This is not the Scrooge redeeming himself. This is a guy going to the bad place.
And the way he talks to his priest about some path to redemption, that this might be something on that spectrum, but it's not redemption. It's not salvation.
And the priest wasn't really going a long way to like sell it to him either.
Yeah.
Because I think he knows what he's dealing with.
He does.
Yeah. It's like I said, I know some people were kind of hating on this film or like, well, yeah, Martin Scorsese did a 3-hour gangster movie, ho hum, but
I think those people maybe haven't seen it.
Do you think this is the last?
Well, I'll say I am not uniquely primed to enjoy this movie, but I am certainly primed to enjoy it because, like I mentioned, my father is essentially one of these guys. He tells a lot of stories about his childhood that I think are tangentially related to the mafia. He acts and he talks and he looks just like these guys.
Yeah.
So when I see a 3.5-hour epic that is essentially about what could have been of my dad's life.
Yeah.
How can I not love it?
And I don't have any of that experience. I mean, I love your dad. I think he's a cool dude. But I just love a good gangster film. And we were talking like before we started recording this, you had a thought about like how many more of these are left? Because
could this be the last great Italian gangster movie
like
of my lifetime?
Film. Yeah.
Because I just don't think the younger generations have this affinity for
it's like
these
a
stories.
Western, like you're just not a lot of those. Maybe it'll come back around, but yeah, these guys are all old.
Yeah.
And it's a reason. Like people make people make gangster movies today. It's about, you know, it's Asian gangs, it's Russian gangs, it's cyber gangs, it's Fast and Furious shit. It's not like mafioso stuff. This grand operatic kind of stuff.
Nitrous gang. Can we coin like the nitrous mob?
Nitro Don.
Yeah, Nitro Don. That would be perfect. Nitro Dom.
Dom the Don. You might be right. This might be kind of like a high, you know, this might be like the last of this kind of old guard.
Yeah.
Because who else is going to, you know, come out? You're going to get Francis to come out of retirement and one up him. I don't know if anything would motivate you, like, you know, them pulling this off at this late might. But
so that makes me think of two things. A, where do you rank this movie as far as, I know you've only seen it once and you've seen so many of these others many times. Man, is this a Godfather level? Is this a Casino level?
It's approaching that, and I instinctively want to. I need to see Casino again. I think I even like it better than Goodfellas, but I think it's right there. Like it's like maybe a notch above Casino, because I think the characters are a little bit more relatable.
And I really appreciate the scope of the thing.
Yeah, the history.
Cradle to grave of the intricate workings of the mafia and how you rise through the ranks and how, you know, you're tasked with, you do one hit, you prove yourself there, you become the hitman, the enforcer for the rest of them. It's all fascinating to me.
And some of this stuff, it's like it gets almost Tarantino-esque when they're like, have this long scene of these guys driving to like a hit. And the way they kind of like how sensitive they are about the subject of death, even though they traffic in it, right? They're very, they talk around it. It's never like, hey, you need to do this. Hey, it's all about like, hey, someone needs to tell him that, you know, he's at the end of the line. It is what it is, you know? And
then also in that Irishman in Conversation video that we've been talking about, Scorsese says he didn't really set out to make this movie for a specific thing. He didn't want to make it necessarily for theaters or necessarily for like the feature length that you think of. Like he just made what he felt he needed to make in the moment. And I think that really paid off. Yeah.
For being a 3.5 hour movie, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of fat on it at all.
No.
I don't think that everyone agrees with that statement. I know that Cecily was of the opinion that this was a boring film with a lot of bullshit in it.
Okay.
But she was also kind of sort of background watching it the entire time. And
tweeting and texting.
But then again, like but I'm a sucker for this. Like and I know that like there's people on the forum that I like a lot, like D, you know, cannot see what's brilliant about The Godfather.
That's fine. To each their own.
Yeah, everybody's got their. But if you do like these types of films, if you're a sucker for The Godfather, if you're a sucker for Goodfellas, then we actually answered a question because like to me, I need to see Casino again. I'm very comfortable putting this above Goodfellas. Casino's got some real fastball heat with guys in their prime.
Yeah.
I wish, and it's kind of like this is why Heat's so amazing, right? You got De Niro and you got Pacino,
right?
But they only share the screen like for like that like 5 or 10 minutes, and it crackles. But it's just like we're here. It's like they're just living in this thing for 3.5 hours. Yeah. But I don't think anything can ever approach the grandeur of The Godfather. And it's and I'll put the whole trilogy up on there. Like maybe this is Godfather 3, you could put some things above it, but like if you take that as an entire unit, especially Godfather 1, Godfather 2, I don't think anyone's going to be able to approach that.
Man, those are untouchable.
Like you just
how about the Untouchables?
That's a lot of fun.
It is.
Untouchables is a shit ton of fun, but it's not up on any of these levels.
Yeah. I'm with you. This is not Godfather, but man, it's good.
It's really good. And if you like this type of movie, you've probably already seen it. I've been wanting to see this ever since it came out. I was way too busy when it was like, you know, right out and relevant. And I've realized I've kind of had this sitting on the shelf like a fine bottle of wine. So, you know, being able to open it now, it's nice.
Another thing that really resonated with me was the choice of music. They use this song in the Still of the Night several times, which is a song that I have heard many, many times around the house when I was a child, because my dad owned the 45 of it, and he would play that on his fucking record player. It's hilarious to me because if you listen to In the Still of the Night, the dude singing it, whose name I don't know, sorry, is a really good singer. The backup singers, take them or leave them. They're not great. And this is the case with these doo-wop bands from back in the day. It typically, like, these were groups of friends, and then my dad has told this stories because he was in these types of bands when he was a kid. Has told these stories about how you'd get a group of guys who were just friends at school or whatever.
It's like the equivalent of the garage band today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You get a group of dudes together in your garage, and you just be singing on the street, you know, not for money or anything, just because that's what you did. Like, you didn't have a lot of money back then if you were growing up in these areas, and unless you were in the mob. And it would typically be like one of your guys was good enough to make it as a singer.
Right.
And they'd bring along essentially their entourage, right? And they'd employ them as backup singers and shit like that. So you'd always have like the star of the show, and then groups would split up because the star would be stolen away, or they'd think like, oh, I'm too good for the rest of these guys, and they'd go on to something better.
They're pretty much the music industry.
Yeah. My uncle actually recorded a couple of tracks on that we had 45s of.
Interesting.
And my dad was part of that group for a little while, and interesting history, yeah. Through my father living in those areas.
What was the band name?
That time.
Do you know the...
I don't remember.
Big Al and the Tommy Guns.
Big Al and the Tommy Guns, yeah. Sure was. One other thing, I couldn't tell if this was an intentional reference or I'm just reading too much into it, but when Jesse Plemons, Chuck, has the fish in the backseat, I couldn't help but think of the Godfather sleeping with the fishes thing.
This is Jimmy Hoffa's kind of like soft-headed son, right? Yeah. It
is.
Yeah.
Is that... Was he delivering like a message to somebody? Is this like there was a hit and he was telling people about it? What?
I think you find out later that he was just actually delivering a fish, and that Jesse Plemons is just dumb, and the Chucky is just dumb, and also like,
oh man,
kind of, because the thing is Frank also thinks he might be in danger here. Because remember, he's like, oh, I'll sit in the back.
Right,
no, you
right.
sit, and then he sits back there, and like there's a dead But yeah, I think that he's just his story's flimsy because he doesn't think much about it. His uncle tells him to go pick up a fish for him. He goes, "Hey, you got a fish for my uncle?" "Oh yeah, I got your uncle's fish. Here's a fish." He's an idiot. He doesn't. He's probably got some more money. He knows what to do with. He doesn't. Yeah. He just throws a frozen fish, back in the back seat, making a giant fish stinking mess. But. Yeah, I mean, the movie does work on you seeing all the other gangster movies, and Frank's on high alert, so like. Yeah. It's one of those, it's kind of like a equivalent of, I guess, a jump scare, and it just turns out it's the cat. I think it's the mafia equivalent of like, you know, there's danger in the air because the mafia is a dangerous business, but in this case, there's nothing to it.
I mean, I can see why he would be worried. Like, he's hired to do this job. He's Jimmy Hoffa's friend. He didn't convince him. You know, he failed to convince him.
Hoffa plays mind games. Like that assassination attempt in court, that was just theater, right?
I don't know.
That guy going in there and just like having an empty revolver?
No, it wasn't. It was a pellet gun. So this really happened. Somebody busted into a courtroom. They were sent to
I thought he shot him with blanks or something.
No, they were sent to a mental hospital afterward because like they literally like thought God had told them
really
to go shoot Jimmy Hoffa.
The pellet gun.
He went in with the pellet gun and shot him a couple times.
Oh my God. Okay, because I didn't do that research in that part of it, and I thought that this is something Jimmy did just to put him like to gain sympathy, make his son look like he's a hero.
No,
get a real moment in court. Huh.
Yeah. Who's more typecast? Is it Joe Pesci or is it Jesse Plemons?
Jesse Plemons.
Because you said he's playing this idiot Chuck. He kind of always plays the idiot. He just has that face.
The only time I can think he's played a smart person is in The Post, where he plays that lawyer that protects the Post from the lawsuit from the Nixon government.
I don't remember that movie.
He plays like this fresh out of this college kind of like civil rights lawyer who's paid by the Post to try to keep him out of trouble.
That was the only time
I've seen him play a person that's not like soft in the head or something wrong with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's got a lifetime ahead of him to really lean into that typecasting, to calcify into a Pesci or shit, like even what Al Pacino has become. I'm glad he got this one last great role. He's still fucking Al Pacino.
Oh yeah.
He's still like doesn't do any oorahs, but it's never quite far. They cut all those out.
Yeah, and if you watch that In Conversation thing, you can definitely see the Pacino in every role he's ever played.
Yeah.
Like he's just kind of playing different versions of himself.
Yeah. I didn't feel that way I still don't feel that way about Michael Corleone. Like he gets there in the third one.
Yeah. Okay. That might be the exception.
But like that's why I think The Godfather is so fucking amazing. Like Michael Corleone's character arc in that movie is he goes from all-American college boy war hero that hates his family, and hates the way they live their life to the fucking coldest Don that's ever lived. And that's a trip. Yeah. I don't understand. I can't. I don't believe the people don't like that movie, but they walk among us. Mm-hmm. And they're otherwise nice people. Anything else we want to talk about?
I wish they had done more work with the visual effects on the hands, because the hands are the giveaway.
A lot of liver spots.
A lot of liver spots on these 50-year-old men's hands.
A lot of veiny, knobby hands. On
this 40, 30. I don't know how old he's supposed to be when he's driving the truck, but those are not the hands of a healthy 35-year-old man.
No, it's like Judy.
You see these hands?
It's like
these are not hands of a 75-year-old man.
No, it's like Judi Dench and Cats. Like she's like a fucking cat, and then all of a sudden, what are these hands? You forgot to animate the hands, man.
Yeah.
Come on, ILM. You don't have hand budget?
No.
We have, so this has been a lot of fun. Next week, we've got something that's interesting and topical. We're going to see the 2011 film Contagion.
Yeah.
I just saw this last weekend because fuck it. I was quarantined in my home anyway. Why not?
It's excellent, right?
It's really good.
Yep.
And there's a lot of really eerie, freaky similarities to what's going on with coronavirus, but there's also a lot of important differences.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be fun just to discover it as a movie because it's very visually interesting. It's very compelling. It's got a lot to say about the moment, but there's also, people that want to like see that as the blueprint for Corona need to calm a little bit down, and maybe we can talk about that. But that's what we're going to be watching next week and talking about on the next week's Bald Movie. If you want to, prep with us, then rent it. It's available in many outlets right now. Contagion 2011 next week. Thanks for watching and listening to The Irishman with us. We'll see you next week. Until then, I'm A.Ron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.